Today we're going to be discussing how R2 and R2 labor really work together in tandem. So we'll see how sales and labor can really work together, each in their own module, each in their own domain, while keeping all of the information synchronized between the two modules and keeping each other up to date while changes are happening. We're going to take a look at how estimated costs change throughout the process of actually hiring people, because we start with a defaulted rate within R2, defaulted cost rate within R2. And as we move to R2 labor and we start scheduling people, those rates may change. So those rate changes obviously would have an impact on our costs and on our labor margins. And then at the end, we'll take a look at the actual costs and also see how those are reflected on the order. Again, the whole idea is just to make sure that you as a company are making enough profit or making the profit margins that you want to on labor that you're selling to your customers. So for this webinar today, I'm going to be jumping back and forth between R2 and R2 labor. Each time I'm kind of wearing a different hat. Sometimes I'll be acting as the salesperson, and sometimes I'll be acting as the labor planner. So to begin with, I'm here in R2, and we'll start by creating an order. So everyone's pretty familiar with the process of creating an order, I'm sure. I'll just go ahead and create a quote here. Give it a name. We'll give it 3 days, set the dates a little bit in the future. And we're just going to focus on labor today. So for labor, we're just going to go and pick a couple of positions, not too many. I'm going to take a A1, projectionist, and a couple of stage technicians. I'll change the quantity to 2. Now, as you can see, in my configuration, I already have some rates set up for these, and when they're added onto the order, those rates also carry along. Of course, for us to get not only the charge rate, or we're charging our customer, the revenue, but also to get the costs, one of my requirements here is, of course, to provide dates. As you may know, there are a couple of ways to assign dates to labor lines. The easiest, of course, is just to assign dates. Another good way is to go to schedules and actually build a schedule. So I can say show and then give it the dates, expand that out. Our order is starting on the 17th. We're not going to need the 20th. I'll remove that. And we're good to go. And then, of course, I can take that task and assign it to our positions, and then I'll assume the dates from that task. Of course, the advantage of doing it this way is that I do have changes to make to the dates and times. I don't have to go to each line individually. I can change it in one place and then use this button here to update all of the lines with those change dates. Of course, now that I've done that, amounts have also been calculated. Of course, the amount is our revenue. And we also have our cost column, so our cost is also being populated. So for this stage technicians, for 2 of them, we say that our total is $2,100, and our cost is $1,200. So there's a nice margin in there. If we actually want to see what the margin is, we can go to our cost tab. We'll hit refresh, and of course that'll give us our total charge right now for labor is $51.60, and our cost is $27.60, which gives us a margin of 47%. As I mentioned in the introduction, this cost most likely will change once we start to assign actual people to these positions. Not all of our technicians get paid the same rate, and some are freelancers. They have their own rates that they set and that we negotiate with them. So those rates are very likely to change. But at this point, we have our positions set up, and we have our amount, our revenue, and we have our cost. Next, we're going to switch over to R2 labor, and we'll start to assign resources. We'll also start to see some of the ways where the two applications can start to stay in sync. So here's R2 labor. So R2 labor opens up on the planning screen where we see a list of all of our orders. We can see a lot of information just right from this view. We see if they're a quote or a reservation, order ID, the description, really important fields here. We can see the percentage filled and the percentage confirmed. That is the percentage of positions that have resources assigned to them and the positions that have resources confirmed to them. So this really gives us a good indication of what we need to work on. The dates, the site, the shipping location. I do want to direct your attention to this notify column right here. This does have a couple of different icons. I know they look really similar, but the icons really indicate if it's a new order or if it's something that's already been planned. And that really dictates how the synchronization between R2 and R2 labor works in terms of positions that have already been scheduled. So for example, for these positions that we put onto the R2 order, any changes that I would make to the dates and times would just flow straight through to R2 labor, and the changes would just be made automatically to those positions. If the notify status changes to planning, and that happens once I actually start to assign resources to positions, then the changes would from R2 would not automatically happen on the order, but there would be an indicator that shows that there have been changes. It would tell me as a labor planner what those changes are, and then I could make those changes. Of course, this is done so that we have a chance to, as a labor planner, to recognize the changes are being made and that we know that we need to reach out to our labor pool and let them know about those changes. So that is a main part of the synchronization. So now let's go into that order and let's open it up. So of course here we're going to just focus on right now we have the costs. This is only cost. We don't show revenue here. We have our totals. This of course is going to drive that cost tab back in R2. That's very important. And one of the things that I talked about is that those estimated costs are going to change once we start to actually assign resources. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and search our labor pool. So I'm going to search for my audio technicians. And it shows me all of my audio technicians, my ratings. It shows me who's available, who's not available. For someone who's not available, if I put my mouse over it, it tells me what other orders they're reserved on and for what dates, so I know that they're actually scheduled there. For some people, if they're not available, it'll actually be a personal event. So it all depends on, here we go, reason not available. So that could be for a vacation or for any other reason. And then we see the names. For me, the names in purple are freelancers, and the names in the black text are in-house employees, and lots of other information about them. And of course, one piece of really important information when we're looking at estimated costs is this hourly cost. So this is what's going to drive our estimated costs once we assign one of these people to the position. So let's go ahead and pick an employee. Let's pick Brianna, double click. Brianna is now assigned. The rate has changed. And of course, this has changed because it's an in-house employee. We have them set up with an hourly rate, $30 an hour. Still getting the accurate cost there. So in that case, it has actually gone down. Let's go ahead and pick a projectionist. Same idea. So we'll go ahead and pick a freelancer for this one. Someone who's available, though. There we go. All right. And we have them assigned. And for them, their rate is higher. So the rate has actually gone up. So the other two positions we won't change just yet. But these two are currently just assigned, only assigned. And let's go ahead and save our order. Now, going back to wearing the hat of the salesperson, of course, if I come back over to this side and go to the cost tab, here on the cost tab, we can see that this is just before refreshing it, we have our charge at 51.60. The cost is 27.60, and our margin is currently sitting at 47%. But now if I refresh that, or if the order was closed and I were to reopen it again, now that cost has gone up because of the resources that we assigned, and we've actually gone into a negative margin. Now, of course, the rates that I'm using are just dummy rates. It's just for demo purposes. It's kind of good to see this kind of an extreme example. I don't expect that this would happen in most cases. For companies that are working with live labor with actual rates, I'm sure that your labor rates are in line with what you charge for the labor as well. But this does give a good indication of how the two systems work together. Now, one other thing that I talked about, earlier I mentioned the synchronization. So here, if I actually want to go and add another labor line onto the order, so let's go and add camera operator. So that's being added. We can go and add that same tasks to give it dates and times. Go ahead and save that. And now we'll switch back over to labor planning. I'm going to just exit this to refresh it and come back into that again. Kind of hard to tell right now, but that notify icon has now changed to planning. So the changes are not just happening automatically. And now we can see that the camera operator position has just been added directly because, of course, there's no one assigned to it. So that one is absolutely fine. Let's go back to our order and let's change some of these dates and times. Let's take one of these positions. Let's take our audio A1, which we already have someone assigned to, and let's change the dates and times. Let's change this to 10 a.m. To 8 p.m. Just make a couple of changes here. Change one of the dates. And let's save that. So now coming back to our order, you can do the same thing. Save, exit. And now we actually see that we have a new icon appearing. This icon means that some changes have been made to that order. And of course, let's go ahead and pick that order. That means changes have been made to the order from the R2 side. Let's go ahead and pick that order and go back into the planning screen. And here we see that audio technician, and it does have a status of reconfirm. We also see that we have a new lightning bolt icon show up over here on the right-hand side. And if I put my mouse over it, it actually tells me what the changes are. So the start date changed from 17th 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. to September 17th at 10 a.m. So it did record, it does give me the information about that change. Now, there are some options that I have here. I can go ahead and make those changes myself, or I can go into this menu here and just click on Reset Task Dates, and that will bring those dates and times in from R2 into R2 Labor and have the new dates and times. Then, of course, I would want to let Brianna know of those date and time changes if I had already communicated out to her. Now, what happens if we do the opposite? So that was changes from R2 coming on to R2 Labor. But what happens if we need to make some changes in R2 Labor and we need to let the sales team know about those changes as well? So I see that I have two stagehands. As a labor planner, maybe I'll say, you know what, I actually can't pull this job off with two stagehands. I need to add more. And of course we can go and we can add positions. So let's go and find our stagehands. Here we go. We have our stage technicians, and I'm going to say that I need to add 2 more. And accept. So now we've added 2 more. Now I have 4 in total. And then again, let's go ahead and save this order. And now, of course, we're going to go and switch back over. If you see, I just got a notification down over here on the right-hand side. New lines added to the planning order. That's actually a notification that's come in through the change that was made. Obviously, it arrived a little bit later. It does send them out every 5 minutes or so, but it does give me a notification that that those labor lines were changed. Even if I went back to our dashboard, there would be a notification here also showing that new lines were added to the planning order. Of course, clicking on that would take me into the order again. So let's go back to R2 now. Again, wearing our R2 labor, our R2 salesperson hat. And now let's go to our synchronize button. So the synchronize button is going to show us any changes that have been made from the R2 labor planning side. And in this case, it shows us those 2 added positions. I, as the salesperson, can take a call on if I'm going to charge the client for those positions or not. So in this case, I'm going to say, yes, I do want to charge. I'm going to double click on those to add the plus sign, which means that I want them to be synchronized. And then I have the synchronize button here, and I'd be able to add them to the order. Before I click on the button, I just want you to know that this not only applies to added positions, but it also applies to any dates or times that would be changed from the labor side. So if the labor coordinator decides that they need more hours and adds more time, and they want to charge that back to the client, those lines would also be marked, and you'd also be able to synchronize those back. So let's go ahead and sync. And now we have 2 and another 2, which is 4, and we're all set and ready to go. Of course, in labor planning, I did not assign a task, so the task is not assigned here. So this is how labor planning and R2 work in sync. Really, they work in tandem for making sure that the labor requirements are set together, and of course, the labor costs are updated according to the changes that are being made with different personnel and different times that are changed on the order. So really, when I come back to my cost tab, I can get a much clearer view of where I am in terms of my labor profit margins. Now that we've done that, we have one more aspect that we need to look at. This is all talking about the estimated cost. We have one more area that I just wanted to touch on briefly today, which is the actual cost. So once we're done with our order and people actually go out in the field to work, there are 2 different ways for us to collect the actual times, and of course then apply the actual costs to the order, and then see what those costs are. So the 2 ways that we have to do it is, one is through timesheets. So we can have resources either fill out timesheets, or a project manager can fill out timesheets. That would collect the actual hours. We use the same rate that's on the labor line and the same pay policy that's on the labor line to calculate out the actual cost. That's one way. The other way is through purchase orders. So let's just talk about the first one for the timesheets first. So of course here there are a couple of different ways to generate the timesheets. One is I can export a timesheet. So this actually exports to Excel, and then the project manager or crew lead that's on site would be able to populate that Excel with the in and out times, or just with hours, and then we can import back into our system, which would actually generate timesheets. The other way to do this is actually to go back to our order. Let's go back to the planning screen. So from here we can go and create a timesheet. So yes, we'll create a new timesheet. And you can see that the system is already helping me out. It is creating a timesheet for that order. It is a timesheet that covers a job, so an order. There are different types of timesheets, but we do want this one for the just for the order. It does have each of the positions split out by day. So of course timesheets are for each day, and it has all of our resources here. It's already applying the estimated times into the actual times and already calculating our amounts here. Of course, I would be able to go and change the time, so it changed the different clock in and clock out times. We do actually have 3 spots for clock in and clock out throughout the day, and that can be changed to reflect the actual clock in and clock out times, and of course that will change the rate. So this is one way where we can actually get those actual times and then use the actual totals for our job costing and then see the margins against that. There's another way that we can actually do this, and not all of our resources are going to be um, paid through payroll. Some of our resources, of course, are going to be freelancers, and for them we would generate a PO. As of today in the system, you can come back to the order in R2, and again use our lightning bolt, our synchronization button, to go back onto those orders. And then, of course, I'd be able to, from here, pick someone who is a freelancer and actually go ahead and generate a PO for them. So I'd create a new PO, pick the company, and then it would create a PO, and then I'd be able to use the rates for that position or the rates that were invoiced and adjust the PO accordingly. And then it would create that PO, and that would be used as the cost for that position on the order. I said as of today because some of this functionality is actually going to be changing as of this Friday when we release version 6.2409. In 6.2409, purchase order generation for labor is actually going to happen, or it can happen, from labor planning. And it's also a process that can be automated when people that are freelancers are confirmed to positions. So it'll generate the PO automatically, it'll generate a PO number, and then of course that PO can be updated later with the amounts that are going to be paid out to that resource, and those will be used as the actual cost. Once again, that's going to be available in version 6.2409. So here we need to talk about just one last thing, which is what is the hierarchy that's used to calculate the labor cost. So we talked about that at the beginning we have a position that's been added to an order. There's no resource that's been assigned, so we have the default rate. Then we assign a resource, and that uses the resources rate. And then we have the actual costs either coming from a timesheet or from a purchase order. So in that case, we do have a hierarchy which is used. And the hierarchy is exactly in that order. It starts with the default position cost, and then the resources position cost rate. And then we do have the timesheet, and then finally the purchase order. And really, the purchase order trumps everything else. If there is a purchase order that's attached to a labor line, for that line, it will always use the cost of that purchase order for the total cost. So, in review, we've been able to, again, see how sales and labor work together in R2, each one in their own application. We've seen the synchronization between the two. We've seen the notifications between the two as well. We've looked at the estimated costs and labor margins and how they change throughout the stages of booking labor. So, at the beginning it's estimated, then it's estimated with the cost of the resources that are assigned, and then finally the actual costs either from timesheets or from purchase orders.